After their father loses his life, two girls begin to be pursued by a smiling, silent evil entity that is determined to exterminate them. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, The Jester, from 2023. On Hallows Eve, a man called John is on his way home when he begins to be chased by Jester, a masked entity in an orange suit. On the way, the man sees a child watching him in a dark alley, but decides to just ignore it and keep walking. A few meters ahead, the girl appears again in his path and John closes his eyes as tightly as he can, making the hallucination disappear. Thoughtful, the man picks up a Polaroid photo and it is revealed that the girl he is looking at is actually his daughter. After some time looking at the photograph, John decides to call the girl, who is now an adult. To John's surprise, Emma answers and he takes the opportunity to apologize for everything that happened, without imagining that Jester is right behind him watching. Despite his apology, Emma is still unable to forgive him and is very harsh with John, swearing at him and hanging up on him. As the man cries, Jester appears behind him and touches his shoulder, making John turn around. Realizing the human state, the entity begins to mock him and covers his mouth to stop him talking. Jester then makes a rope appear out of thin air and begins to tighten it around John's neck, making a magic and pulling on his own tie to lift the human into the air. After a few seconds with the rope around his neck, John loses his life and Jester levitates him off the bridge, releasing him from above. The next day, John's funeral takes place and Emma decides to show up, although she avoids contact with everyone else. Unlike her, Jocelyn, the daughter John had with another woman, appears to be much more shaken and welcomes the people who have come to pay their last respects to her father. When they arrive at the funeral, Jocelyn's friends greet their friend and ask about Emma, being surprised that she is attending. Away from everyone, Emma calls her mother and tells her that the funeral is over, as well as telling her that she's spoken to Jocelyn and they've arranged to meet that evening. While talking to her mother, Emma sees Jester dancing beside John's coffin and celebrating in a bizarre way, but he mysteriously disappears as soon as the girl turns around. Behind the trees, Jester watches Emma walk away when two cemetery workers appear and ask him to leave. Instead, the entity sits on a chair and puts its feet on John's coffin, which makes one of the employees take out his cell phone to call the police. As he calls, the other man falls to the ground out of nowhere and hits his head on a rock. Desperate, the colleague speaks to the emergency services and asks for an ambulance to come to his aid. When he approaches his friend to see if he's breathing, the man realizes that his shoelace has been tied and that's why he's fallen. At that moment, the attendant asks where they are so that she can send an ambulance, but before he can answer, the employee starts choking and spitting up blood. Out of nowhere, an apple comes out of the man's mouth and he is eliminated without understanding what has happened. In the evening, Emma goes to meet Jocelyn and sits down next to her to talk. Trying to be friendly, Jocelyn offers her a drink and thanks her for coming, bringing up various subjects to try to keep the conversation pleasant. After many bottles, Jocelyn takes courage and hands Emma an envelope, showing her the photo that was in John's pocket at the moment he supposedly took his life. As soon as she sees the Polaroid, Emma is visibly upset and is extremely rude to her stepsister. Realizing that she doesn't intend to get any closer, Jocelyn asks why Emma came to the funeral and she tells her about the day John abandoned her and her mother. Emma says that she has hated her own father since that day, and that the feeling grew even stronger after discovering that he had married another woman and had a second daughter. Finally, Emma says that she came to the funeral in search of peace when she confirmed that John really was eliminated, but that nothing has changed and she still has the same negative emotions even after seeing the coffin. After the argument, Emma leaves angrily and Jocelyn takes the photo back, leaving the bar rather upset. On the street, Emma is walking home when she meets Jester, who tries to do some magic tricks for her. Headless, Emma ignores it and continues walking, but the entity teleports in front of her and offers her a deck of cards to choose from. Frightened, the woman runs into a nearby convenience store, where she watches the masked man. After some time waiting, Jester leaves and starts walking around the neighborhood, meeting two boys who are picking up some sweets. While the bigger one takes several treats from the pot, the smaller one is more polite and only takes one per house. Seeing this, Jester performs a magic trick on the little one and gives him another sweet as a present, which makes the older one approach him saying that the trick was bad. As a way of punishing the young man, Jester takes his sweets and starts putting them in the younger boy's bag. Wanting to retrieve the treats, the young man tries to take everything back, but Jester stops him by putting his arm inside the bag to hold him back. Frightened, the older boy runs desperately and the younger one follows, leaving their bags behind. At home, Jocelyn finishes handing out sweets to the children and goes to the sofa to watch some old horror movies. Suddenly, the woman notices a silhouette at the window and hears some knocks on the door. Frightened, Jocelyn stares at the silhouette until one of her friends calls out to her, putting her at ease. Inside, the friends start talking about the Halloween festival and one of them asks if Jocelyn doesn't want to go, but the girl used to go with John and refuses the invitation, saying it's not a good idea. In the convenience store, Emma buys a drink and is walking towards the hotel when Jester reappears in front of her. Tired of running away, the girl tries to talk to the stranger, who once again offers her the deck of cards. Even though she finds it strange, Emma picks up a card, memorizes it and puts it back in the deck. The masked magician then shuffles the cards and asks her to take the top one, but Emma is not at all impressed by the trick and walks off in the opposite direction. After a while, Emma realizes that the magician is still behind her and turns to push him, knocking his bottle to the ground. Jester then bends down to pick up a shard of glass and Emma asks if he wants to eliminate her. Unlike what she had imagined, the entity uses the shard of glass to cut its own neck, causing a small amount of blood to spurt out onto her face. While Emma tries to understand what has happened, Jester gets up all stiff and strange. Terrified, Emma runs into an alley trying to escape while Jester walks slowly behind her. At home, Jocelyn talks to her friends about what comes after perishment when Liam tells her not to worry, saying that the cemetery is the end of everything. Upset by what he says, the girl goes to John's old room and sits down on a chair to look at the family photos. While she is reminiscing, John's ghost appears sitting in the armchair behind her, which frightens Jocelyn even more. Thinking she's delirious, the girl goes back to her friends and asks to go to the festival, saying she needs to distract herself somehow. At the site, Jocelyn follows her friends while seeing various things that remind her of her father, such as random people wearing John's clothes and with a rope around their necks. Just then, the group arrives at the haunted forest playground and Jocelyn decides to accompany her friends who are excited. Instead, the group ends up splitting up and Jocelyn ends up in a biome full of ropes, which reminds her of John. Nevertheless, the girl manages to get through the forest and ends up in another part which is full of scary pumpkins. Following the trail, Jocelyn finds a gigantic clown's head and decides to enter through its mouth. Inside, the frightened woman sees her father's legs dangling and begins to go into shock, made even worse when one of her friends sneaks up behind her. Shaken, the girl runs outside and begins to cry, missing her mother and father. Jocelyn regrets, saying that she thought she could still have a family and that's why she tried to get close to Emma, but it didn't work and now she feels totally alone. At the convenience store, Emma arrives bloodied and tries to tell the attendant what she saw, but the man thinks she's delirious from drinking and doesn't believe her. As the woman refuses to leave, the employee calls the police and Emma again tries to explain what she saw, but once again the officers don't believe that a masked man got up after taking his own life. As she tries to explain herself, Emma sees Jester enter the store and walk around until he stops behind the policeman. Upon seeing the masked man, the agents ask him if he has seen Emma before and ask him to remove the costume, but Jester just ignores them and teleports behind the girl. After Emma walks away, the entity takes a handcuff from his pocket and attaches it to his wrist, causing the object to land on the arm of the two policemen. While they try to understand what has happened, Jester stuffs the policeman's head inside his top hat and pulls it back, leaving only the neck empty. Desperate, the other policeman removes the handcuff and shoots in the direction of the monster, who holds the projectile as if it were nothing. Taking advantage of the fact that he's busy, Emma leaves the store and runs through the streets, but Jester soon finishes off the second policeman and goes after her. At the festival, Jocelyn is sitting with her friends when she sees John's ghost passing before her eyes. Tired of running away, the girl gets up and goes after him, leaving Liam alone with Jester. In yet another trick, the entity takes some cups and hides an object under one of them, asking the man to guess where it is. When the stranger has finished, Liam points to the cups in the middle and Jester shows him that the object has changed color, which impresses the man. Continuing the show, Jester lifts the second cup and reveals that several teeth are inside. Suddenly, Liam's entire dental arch disappears and his mouth begins to bleed. While her friend falls victim to the entity, Jocelyn sees John approaching his younger version and stands by watching. At the table, Jester lifts the third cup and reveals that there is another random object underneath. Just when Liam thinks he's got away with it, the entity shows that there's still something stuck inside the cup and slaps the bottom, causing the young man's eyes to fall to the table. Hearing Liam's cries of pain, the girls try to carry him to the exit while calling for Jocelyn to leave, but Jester approaches and breaks the leg of one of them, as well as leaving the other voiceless. As the entity approaches Jocelyn, Emma runs through the streets of the city until she is exhausted, stopping to rest in front of a library. Just then, her mother calls and starts laughing in Emma's face, asking why she's afraid of a court jester. Continuing, the woman says that none of this would be happening if she were friendlier and that's why everyone is moving away. Just then, Jester appears in front of the bookshop and talks to Emma using her mother's voice. Tired of running away, The woman asks what he wants and Jester starts talking about Jocelyn, saying that she has tried hard to make the two of them close, but that now it's too late. Confused, Emma asks what Jester has done with Jocelyn and the entity tells her that she shouldn't care, since it never wanted to know about her before. More determined, the woman repeats the question and the entity says that she is free to leave without looking back, just like John. Jester then says that if she does this, Jocelyn will soon be forgotten and Emma will be able to live her life in peace, but says that if she wants to continue playing, she must go all the way. Determined, Emma says she won't leave without Jocelyn and Jester congratulates her on her choice, saying that she has finally learned something new. While the entity laughs, Emma sees John's spirit on the bridge where he threw himself and runs over to talk to him. Desperate, the girl begs him not to do this and asks to talk, but John replies that he tried to talk that night and was rejected. Still with the rope around his neck, the spirit tells her that she is to blame for his elimination and that everything could be different if she had agreed to talk. Repentant, Emma asks for forgiveness and calls John her father for the first time, but the man continues to blame her and puts the noose around her neck. Suddenly, the object starts to move on its own and drags Emma off the bridge, causing her to fall alone in the middle of the cemetery. On the spot, Emma calls for her sister and finds the small version of Jocelyn lost in the forest. As she doesn't recognize her, the girl asks if she has seen her father and says that she was abandoned there, but Emma soon realizes that this is not an illusion and continues looking for her sister. As the woman walks away, little Jocelyn claims that she is the real daughter and that Emma is just a make-believe, but the woman manages to resist her taunts and continues walking in search of the real Jocelyn. A few meters ahead, Emma sees John and little Jocelyn entering a strange building and decides to go after them, finding the two of them happily carving pumpkins for Halloween. Seeing his eldest daughter, John says that he never wanted Emma and that she was just a mistake. With a knife in his hand, the man approaches his daughter and says that he was never able to be happy because of her, claiming that even if he had a new family, the memory that Emma existed was enough to take away his happiness. At that moment, John points the knife at his own chest and sticks the blade in all the way. Seeing Emma cry, the man asks why she is doing this and says that his elimination should make her happy. John then asks her if she feels guilty and says that Emma will have to live with this for the rest of her life. Not knowing what to do, the woman asks for Jocelyn's help, who approaches her to mock her, saying she feels sorry for her and mentioning how pathetic she looked at the funeral. Closer up, Jocelyn takes the knife to John's chest and says that Emma had the chance to put things right and wasted it, saying that she is a burden to everyone around her. Finally, Jocelyn says that she doesn't want to have to live with Emma and hands her the knife to take her life, saying that it would be her last act of kindness to the world. With the blade in her hands, Emma begins to cry until she remembers that none of this is real and plunges the knife into Jocelyn's stomach. At that moment, the illusion is broken and Emma realizes that she has pierced Jocelyn for real, causing her to fall to the ground as she struggles to stay alive. While trying to help Jocelyn, Jester approaches and Emma takes the opportunity to strike several knife blows to the entity's heart, saying that he is a disease. Calmer, Emma tells Jester that she won't run away anymore and that he can do whatever he wants with her, as long as he leaves Jocelyn alone. Instead, the entity just walks away and leaves the two alone to get help. Sometime later, Emma is in the cemetery talking to her mother and says she's thinking of spending a few days with her when she gets back from her trip. After arranging everything, Emma ends the call and stops in front of John's gravestone, apologizing for everything and saying that she should have talked to him that night. Despite this, the girl says she is not to blame for his elimination and claims that John made his own choices. In the end, Emma says that she wishes they had gotten along well, but that despite everything, they still have the same blood. She then says that she will carry this burden until the end, but that she will not make the same mistakes and will move on with Jocelyn. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.